A Yoruba man condemns Nigerian former military leader Ibrahim Babangida, IBB, for annulling the June 12, 1993 election, calling it a betrayal of Nigeria's democratic progress. He blames military rulers from 1966 onward, including General Gowon, for Nigeria's decline, accusing them of war crimes and economic destruction. He argues that Nigeria has been severely mismanaged, citing power shortages, only 3,000 millivolts generated, massive national debt, and an annual budget deficit. He alleges that Nigeria's wealth has been privatized and looted by elites, turning the country into an economic disaster where money is concentrated in a few hands. He suggests adopting Saudi Arabia's 2017 model of reclaiming stolen wealth, where rich elites were forced to return their money to the state. He advocates for regional governance instead of the current 36-state system, proposing 8 strong regions with their own constitutions to reduce government expenses. He believes the next elections should be halted until Nigeria is properly restructured, fearing another cycle of corruption and political manipulation. He claims Nigeria's wealthy political class resists change because they benefit from the current system, controlling elections and governance through money. He warns that if reforms don't happen soon, Nigerians may resort to violent protests like in Kenya, where citizens targeted corrupt politicians and their families. He urges citizens, religious leaders, and traditional rulers to unite in demanding restructuring, as waiting until elections will only continue the cycle of corruption. The discussion about Nigeria's political and economic fate has long been a matter of deep emotion and controversy, and this latest report brings those issues into sharp focus once again. In a passionate outpouring of anger and disillusionment, a Yoruba man has taken to the public stage to condemn the actions of Nigeria's former military leader, Ibrahim Babangida, particularly in relation to the annulment of the June 12, 1993 election. In his view, this decision was not merely a political maneuver, but a deep betrayal of the nation's hard-won democratic progress. Over the years, he has pointed to the actions of successive military rulers, beginning with the intervention in 1966 under the leadership of General Yakubu Gowon, and continuing through the decades, accusing them of a long history of war crimes, economic mismanagement, and deliberate policies that have pushed Nigeria into a state of decay and despair. I remember the weight of history when I first encountered these issues, and it becomes clear that the narrative is not just about a single event, but a continuum of decisions and actions that have left an indelible mark on the nation. The annulment of the June 12, 1993 election stands as a critical juncture in Nigeria's modern history. Many Nigerians, including this impassioned Yoruba commentator, view that day as a turning point when hope for a free and fair democratic process was violently undermined. The cancellation of what many believe to be a genuine expression of the people's will set the stage for years of political instability, economic decline, and social unrest. It is not difficult to see why emotions run high when discussing such a traumatic chapter in the nation's past. The sense of betrayal is compounded by the fact that many of the country's problems today, ranging from chronic power shortages to an ever-mounting national debt and persistent budget deficits, are seen as the direct result of decisions made during those early decades of military intervention. For decades, Nigeria has struggled with the issue of inadequate power generation, with only about 3,000 megawatts produced to meet the needs of a rapidly growing population and economy. This chronic shortage is emblematic of a broader pattern of mismanagement and neglect. The commentator argues that the misallocation of resources and the systematic looting of the nation's wealth by a small group of elites have transformed Nigeria into what he describes as an economic disaster. The country, which once held vast potential, now suffers under the weight of privatized wealth that benefits only a privileged few. This concentration of wealth has not only stifled economic growth, but has also prevented the equitable development of infrastructure and public services, leaving millions of Nigerians without reliable electricity, proper health care, and effective education. In one of the more provocative suggestions, the Yoruba critic points to the example of Saudi Arabia in 2017, when the Crown Prince reportedly summoned the country's wealthiest citizens and demanded that they return what had been taken from the state. This bold move, he argues, could serve as a model for Nigeria. By reclaiming the wealth that has been siphoned off by corrupt political elites and military rulers, Nigeria could begin the process of rebuilding its economy on a more equitable foundation. This idea, though radical, is rooted in the belief that the redistribution of wealth is necessary to correct the historical injustices that have left the country divided and impoverished. It is a call for accountability, a demand that those who have enriched themselves at the expense of the nation be forced to contribute back to the public coffers, so that the benefits of Nigeria's natural resources and economic output can be shared more fairly among all citizens. The conversation also turns to the structure of Nigeria's governance itself. The current system, which is based on 36 states, is seen by the Yoruba critic as inherently flawed and excessively costly. Instead, he advocates for a restructuring of the country into 8 strong regions, each with its own constitution. The argument here is that regional governance could lead to a more efficient and responsive system, one that reduces bureaucratic expenses and brings government closer to the people. By decentralizing power and promoting regional autonomy, it is believed that Nigeria could overcome some of the inefficiencies and corruption that have long plagued the central government. This restructuring would not only lower the cost of governance, but would also encourage greater participation and accountability at the local level, allowing for more tailored solutions to regional problems. Yet, as the debate unfolds, it is clear that the stakes are extremely high. The conversation is laced with intense emotion and personal attacks, with some participants arguing that anyone who accepts responsibility for the historical wrongs, including military leaders like Ibrahim Babangida, should face severe consequences. One commentator went so far as to compare such leaders to Adolf Hitler, suggesting that they deserve nothing less than a fate as brutal as the punishment meted out to tyrants in the past. This harsh rhetoric is a reflection of the deep-seated anger and frustration felt by many Nigerians, who see the legacy of military intervention and corruption as an ongoing wound that has yet to heal. The passionate language used in the discussion underscores the belief that words alone cannot make amends for the irreversible damage done to the nation's democratic and social fabric. One of the most striking elements of the report is the insistence on halting the next round of elections until Nigeria undergoes a thorough restructuring. The argument is that without addressing the systemic issues, such as the concentration of wealth, the inefficiencies of the current political system, and the persistent culture of corruption, the electoral process will continue to be manipulated by the same entrenched elites. These individuals, who control much of the country's resources, are seen as having a vested interest in maintaining the status quo. They use their financial power to influence election outcomes, ensuring that any change that might threaten their grip on power is swiftly quashed. The call to suspend elections is therefore not a rejection of democracy per se, but rather a demand for a more substantive form of reform that addresses the root causes of Nigeria's political and economic crises. As the dialogue continues, there is also a strong emphasis on the importance of collective action. The commentator urges all Nigerians, including citizens, religious leaders, and traditional rulers, to come together and demand change. This appeal for unity is grounded in the belief that only through a concerted and unified effort can the deep-seated problems of the nation be resolved. The idea is that waiting for the next election or relying on the goodwill of a single leader will not bring about the comprehensive transformation that is needed. Instead, it is necessary for all segments of society to engage in a constructive and inclusive dialogue, one that prioritizes the long-term interests of the nation over the short-term gains of a select few. This call for unity is both a plea for solidarity in the face of overwhelming challenges and a reminder that the future of Nigeria depends on the collective will of its people. The report does not shy away from highlighting the economic dimensions of Nigeria's woes. The chronic underproduction of electricity, which stands at a mere 3,000 megawatts, is presented as a symptom of a larger malaise, a sign that the country's resources are being squandered or misappropriated. The massive national debt, which has ballooned over the years, and the persistent annual budget deficit are further indicators of a system in which fiscal mismanagement has become the norm. The privatization of state assets, a policy that was once justified as a means of improving efficiency, is now seen as a mechanism through which the nation's wealth has been funneled into the hands of a few powerful elites. These economic challenges are not abstract problems. They have real and tangible consequences for the lives of everyday Nigerians. They contribute to a cycle of poverty, inequality, and social unrest, a cycle that is difficult to break without radical change. One cannot help but be struck by the intensity of the language used in the discussion. The criticisms leveled against former military rulers and current political elites are not tempered by political correctness. They are raw, unfiltered expressions of anger and disillusionment. For many Nigerians, the scars of past injustices run deep, and the memories of events like the June 12, 1993 election are still fresh. The invocation of historical figures and events, such as General Yakubu Gowon's role in the 1966 military coup or the brutal actions of other military leaders, serves as a stark reminder of the long legacy of misrule that has contributed to the current state of affairs. In this light, the demands for accountability and reform take on an almost existential urgency. They are not merely political demands, but calls for justice and redemption. In this light, the demands for accountability and reform take on an almost existential urgency. They are not merely political demands, but calls for justice and redemption. It is important to note that the emotions expressed in this report are not the result of a single incident, but are the culmination of decades of accumulated grievances. Nigeria's journey as a nation began with promise in 1960 when the country gained independence, only to be marred by a series of coups and military interventions starting in 1966. Each of these events has left its own mark on the national consciousness, contributing to a sense of lost opportunity and unfulfilled potential. The cancellation of the June 12, 1993 election is viewed by many as the nadir of this turbulent history, a moment when the hopes of a generation were dashed and the possibility of a truly democratic Nigeria was cast aside. The debate over this event is not merely an academic exercise. It is a reflection of the deep-seated pain and frustration felt by countless Nigerians who continue to bear the burden of historical injustice. The conversation also touches on the idea that there is little hope for redemption or reconciliation if those responsible for past crimes are allowed to evade accountability. Some participants in the discussion argue that until the military rulers and political elites who orchestrated and benefited from Nigeria's descent into chaos are brought to justice, the cycle of corruption and mismanagement will continue unabated. This sentiment is encapsulated in the provocative statement that those who have betrayed the nation deserve nothing less than the harshest of punishments. Such rhetoric, though incendiary, speaks to a broader sense of moral outrage that has been building over the years. For many Nigerians, the demands for accountability are not simply about retribution. They are about the need to restore a sense of dignity and justice to a nation that has been repeatedly exploited and abused by those in power. In considering the future of Nigeria, the report suggests that a fundamental restructuring of the nation's governance is not only desirable, but essential. The proposal to reorganize the country into 8 strong regions, each with its own constitution, is presented as a pragmatic solution to the deep-rooted problems that have long plagued the nation. By decentralizing power and reducing the number of administrative units from 36 states to a more manageable number of regions, the argument goes, Nigeria could reduce the cost of governance and improve efficiency. This approach is seen as a way to break the cycle of corruption and inefficiency that has characterized the current system, offering a fresh start that is more responsive to the needs of ordinary citizens. The emphasis on regionalism is also reflective of a broader belief that governance should be more localized and tailored to the unique cultural and economic contexts of different parts of the country. At the heart of this debate is the belief that the current system of governance, which has allowed a small group of elites to accumulate vast wealth and power, is fundamentally unsustainable. The Nigerian political class, it is argued, has created a system in which money is the ultimate arbiter of power, enabling them to control elections and manipulate government policies to suit their own interests. This concentration of power has resulted in a form of governance that is disconnected from the needs of the majority of Nigerians. Instead of serving the public interest, the political elite have used their financial clout to entrench their own positions, often at the expense of the nation's long-term prosperity. The report calls for a radical overhaul of this system, one that prioritizes transparency, accountability, and the equitable distribution of resources. The issue of wealth and its redistribution is perhaps one of the most contentious aspects of the debate. The argument that Nigeria's wealth has been privatized and looted by a small cadre of elites is supported by the stark economic realities faced by the country today. With a power generation capacity that barely reaches 3,000 megawatts, a national debt that continues to climb, and an annual budget deficit that shows no sign of abating, the economic indicators paint a picture of a nation in crisis. For many Nigerians, the privatization of wealth is not merely an economic policy, but a moral failing, a betrayal of the social contract between the state and its citizens. The suggestion to follow the example of Saudi Arabia in 2017, when wealthy elites were compelled to return their ill-gotten gains to the state, is seen as a potential remedy for this deep-seated injustice.
Country, if he says he accepts full responsibility, what does that mean? He deserves a bullet in the head, like Hitler did in 1945. He has no right to even talk to Nigerians at all. He has no right to show his face. He's supposed to be hiding in shame until he dies, to be honest.
30 years later, IBB has come out to say the election was free and fair. What's your first impression?
Well, in the take you just had, IBB is saying, he's talking about inconveniences. Inconveniences. What a joke. People died. Lives were destroyed. You cannot recover what we have lost as a nation. He just said it's inconveniences. What a sad admission. What a sad choice of words. The president is so regrettable that he is talking in these terms. is dancing on the grave of people who were just maliciously killed. I singled out Bagauda Kalto is a journalist with Tempo News. He was actually burnt alive in the course of this June 12 crisis. What do you say about Bagauda Kalto? What do you say all the people who were killed on the streets of Ikorodu in Lagos? In a good country, if he says he accepts full responsibility, what does that mean? He deserves a bullet in the head, like Hitler did in 1945.
By himself. Dr. Fakonda.
Is accept responsibility?
Yeah.
Yes, certainly.
I see that you question his choice of word, his euphemism. So let us sort of do a canvas writing. Yes, you absolutely challenge it. Besides the bullet in his head, if you were writing the script, what should he be saying or doing today? What are the right words or what are the right actions?
He has no right to even talk to Nigerians at all. He has no right to show his face. He's supposed to be hiding in shame until he dies, to be honest. Look, let's lay the history.
Yes, let's lay
the generation of the soldiers from 1966.
Yes.
It is now almost 60 years. Their class damaged Nigeria beyond redemption. Beginning from General Gowon, who brought Udoji Awards to spoil the economy of Nigeria. General Murtala killed people in Abagana, in Agbo. He himself, how many people were killed deliberately, pointedly, without remorse over these years? It's not just him. It symbolizes the debacle of Nigeria in the last 60 years that we have had. Now, the effect of what he has done is much bigger than we think.
Yeah.
There are 3 dates in Nigeria history now, 3 dates.
Let's
October
have them.
1960, January 15, 1966, June 12, 1993. We started up as a country in 1960. It was truncated in 1966. 1990 will have been the point where we emerge as a nation, not a mere geographical expression. That chance was lost and lost almost forever. That's the greatest destruction on the Nigerian country, not the Nigerian nation.
There is, Dr.
And we have not recovered since then.
Dr. Fakonda, there is an argument by some people who say that take away June 12, and Babangida perhaps could have been remembered or considered as a great president in terms of the fact that he did a lot of economic reforms, he did some infrastructure, and he indeed birthed the process that led to the election we call the freest and the fairness. I have had occasion in public and in writing to say Babangida is a paradox like Nigeria. So what's your take on that vision that take away June 12 and perhaps it could be considered one of the greatest leaders the country has had? Do you buy into that, or do you think no?
Well, sadly, we cannot take away June 12. If you are wearing a white cloth to an occasion, and you have a red spot on it,
a stain,
you will go back and discard the dress and wear a new one. June 12 has stained all his achievements. Okay, where is the achievement now? We have only 3,000 megawatts of power.
Yeah.
We are owing 141 trillion naira in debt.
Yeah.
We have a deficit of 14 trillion in budget of this year. The indiscipline that he brought about, last year budget cannot be implemented, is spill over to 2025. He brought in impunity. You know, you can build a house, but you destroy it with grenade. It takes grenade to bring a house down now. You could have built a house for 10 years, but one act will just bring the whole thing collapsing.
So your point is that with
That's not the truth.
Your point is that with June 12, there's nothing else to save in the story or legacy of IBB. Is that correct?
I speak to all Nigerians who are around 30 years old who don't know what happened in those days.
Yes.
Why are Nigerians jackpotting overseas now? The country has become ungovernable. Even in his state, Niger State, 1/4 of it is occupied by bandits. Is that a country?
In your
He laid the foundation for what we are doing now today.
in your earlier submission, you seem to claim that from you identified 3 dates: 1960, 1966, and 1993, June 12 to be precise. Is it your submission that from 1966 onwards, all those that intervened, especially the military one, are guilty of where we are today? Is that, let me get that point right?
They are guilty of treason until they are tried, until they show contrition, until they clear the debris out of us. We cannot make it. Look, up till now, the Holocaust people, they are still being hunted down in the world since 1945.
Yeah.
In Nigeria, we have very poor sense of memory. See the way see the ceremony in Transcorp this week now. See all the people who killed Nigeria. They are all dancing and smiling and slapping each other. Is that the legacy for the children who are not born at that time? Is that the legacy they are going to see? That you do crime and you don't do the time. There is no consequence for any bad misconduct.
I was going to go.
That's the major takeaway from this mission.
I was going to go to that, Dr. Fakonda. So here's the point here. You feel there is no space for redemption or recognition from those people, but the past and present leaders do not.
Absolutely.
They do not seem to think so, because you mentioned the gathering that happened on Thursday last in Abuja that had a lot of Nigerian elites, political and business leaders there. Even before then, it is common practice in Nigeria for most of those running for president to do what I call the pilgrimage to Mina. So let's talk about these Nigerian leaders and beyond IBB himself. Well, what's your take on the rest, since you're having this view?
All of them, they are product of massive looting of Nigerian wealth. Everything, Nigeria state have been privatized, both in asset-wise and in liquid cash. You cannot believe how much money in private hands, raw cash. And Nigeria is bleeding. Nigeria is in deficit. Before somebody can donate 2 billion, 3 billion, he must have 50 billion in his account.
Where is that money?
Where is that money coming from? It's not from the...
But wait, Dr. Fakonda, the money...
That money from Nigerian state that they got it?
Dr. Fakonda, the money is their money. What do you want to do about it? What do you propose?
What did they invent? What did they invent to get the money? It's from oil blocks now. I've written a paper. There are 43 entities that has oil blocks in Nigeria. Oil blocks belong to Nigerian state. In any case, until we take the wealth of Nigerian back from these people and put it in public hands.
Yeah.
It happened in Saudi Arabia in 2017. In 2017, the Crown Prince then assembled all the people who have big money in Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
Put them in Ritz-Carlton Hotel and told them, please surrender all that you have so that Saudi Arabia can grow. We need to do the same thing. Somebody, I don't know. As I said, it will be 60 years next year that the soldiers took over the affairs of Nigeria.
Yes.
We have 1 year now to decide that all money in private hands, voluntarily surrender it. No one should have 2, 3, 4, 5 billion and be donating it as if you are pouring confetti on a wedding guest.
Well, if they have
it's obscene. It's obscene.
I get your point.
No, they don't have it. The money should be... The money should be confiscated. In fact, that library money should be confiscated. Which library? Who is going to read the books? Is it the Almajiris in Niger State that will read the books in the library? In Niger State, they shut down the Air Force plane.
Dr. Fakonda,
is that where they're going to read the books in the library?
Dr. Fakonda, you're a man of constitution. Explain to me what kind of laws can you invoke to do that?
I'm
not against you. I want to be convinced.
Doctrine of necessity.
A doctrine of necessity.
The doctrine of necessity has to be conveyed. Yes. Okay. We have 3,000 megawatts.
Yes.
We get 3,000 megawatts. We're stuck on it.
Yes.
If you don't want to apply doctrine, okay, what right did they have to privatize? What right did Babangida have to give all these oil blocks to people? Whom did they consult? Which law gave them the powers to give public wealth to private hands?
So your take,
Which law?
Your take is that we should go back to challenge all the people who said Babangida has made me, I'm grateful to him. We should go back to them and say, let's talk about it. Is that your take?
Look, the atmosphere of wealth without work will not get Nigeria out of where we are. There must be work with wealth. If you are not working and you are wealthy, something is wrong. Something is wrong. That's not the truth. I will not sugarcoat it at all. I mean, somebody like me, I work in public service for 26 years.
Yes.
I've been retired now for 25 years. Can I donate 100 million to anybody? Can I buy form to run for Senate in my state? The next election now, it's all the money privatized they're going to be used to buy forms.
Let's talk about your passion for
my governor.
For restructuring. You're an advocate of regionalism. In your mind, how do we place the local government reforms that we have today and the one you'd like to have in the structure of Nigeria as it stands?
We are doing cosmetics, we are doing palliatives. We need to have a meeting. I have written a letter to Mr. President. He has a good opportunity to reform Nigeria in the right way. We cannot even manage 36 states. Nigeria is not solvent at all. We need to collapse the system. When we go back to regions, region will be strong. The states now will be provinces, actually. We need to cut down the cost of governance. We cannot afford 36 states, 774 local governments. We cannot afford it.
Okay, but wait, Doctor.
Doctrine of necessity.
Yes. No, go ahead. Doctrine of necessity. Let me hear this, your doctrine of necessity, please.
Again, maybe the president announced that he's going to run some youth confab in March. We have not heard anything about it again. The same we have not heard about Orasaye report action again. They just announce things, they don't do it. We don't know what the government President Tinubu is up to. But he needs to convene a special session of ethnic nationalities of Nigeria. He's the only one who can do it. There's no government who can do it unless you are preaching for a military coup. It's the authority of Nigeria today. We have to appeal to him. We have to tell him, look, the best to do is to have a clean conference. 1 week is enough. The document on new structure of Nigeria is available. It doesn't take 3 months confab. No. It will approve. If I have a draft, personally have a draft, and my body, Eminent Elders Forum, have a draft. Afenefere has a draft. Is to authorize it to be discussed, and then a referendum is held. This is a new structure for Nigeria, 8 regions, and then each region will go and write its own constitution within 3 to 6 months. In fact, Western region constitution is ready too. It's ready too for referendum. Kogi and Kwara will be part of Western region. They will be asked, what do they want? The East will do the same. The South Side will do the same. It's not rocket science. And this can be done within 1 to 3 months.
And the Patriots, of which you are part of, also are making moves in that direction. We must add to that.
Absolutely. So, the raw materials are there. It's not going to take long. And look, if you agree on all this I'm saying now, it takes 2 to 3 years to implement. Before you do referendum, to pass the constitutions, to share assets and liabilities, to form new governance, it will take. In fact, we need to suspend the next coming elections. But wait, no room for election to 100 million.
Dr. Fakonda, before you suspend the election, let me ask you a question. It seems so clear and so logical to you why Nigeria needs to be restructured and why we need to go to the regional system and to reduce the cost of governance. Let me ask you an intellectual question. Who do you think is against this seemingly logical step that you embrace, and why do you think they're against it? So 2 questions into one. Who and why?
The people who gathered in Abuja last Thursday,
yes,
they have wealth in their hand. They are kingmakers, and they want to continue being kingmakers.
Yes.
If I want to run now, I don't need any money at all. If I go to Babangida and say, oh, Mr. President, somebody takes me to him and say, oh, I want to run for governor of Osun State, he will grant me 100 million to go and run. So he's a kingmaker. But to run on my own account, it's not possible because I don't have the money. So the money class who are in Abuja this last Thursday, they don't want the change. They don't want to lose their power of control over all of us. But the people are suffering and they are not merciful on the masses. They are not thinking of long term. They are just thinking of sitting on their own billions. And that's all.
So it's.
I don't think we should. They should not wait. They should not wait until people start doing what happened in Kenya. In Kenya, they were said, "Look, you man, we know your houses, we know your children. We are going to do something about it." They should not wait until that time will come. They should not.
So your appeal for them is to go for reform rather than wait for revolution, if I understand you very well.
Absolutely. This channel is very important for them to listen that if they don't do what I'm doing, those who do not give peaceful change a chance will expect anything can happen.
Well, okay.
Even this Osun State matter now, anything can happen. Anything can happen tomorrow in Osogbo. Anything can happen.
Okay,
PDP versus APC.
Dr. Fakonda, it's all well and good. You talk about the leadership, how corrupt, how they've looted, how they've not brought power. But what about the people? What do the people need to do? What is your appeal? What is your request from the people of Nigeria? Because overall, these leaders are few. The people are many.
My own age group, we are the second tier behind the people who have taken Nigeria for a ride.
Yeah.
We need to convene a meeting of our own in Abuja in the next 1 or 2 months. That we wish to have G24, G34, G70. We need to have where many Nigerians come together as a body. After all, they confronted Abacha. It was led by civilians. They confronted Abacha, G34. We need to form equivalent of that now to say, Mr. President, you are there. National Assembly, you are there. We don't want what you are doing anymore. Let's get traditional rulers, the religious leaders. Things are not right. Things are not right. We cannot continue with the next election this way. We cannot. If you don't do something in the next 6 to 7 months, and you go to next year's campaign where they are sharing money, 5,000, then we have lost it. We have lost it, and I saw that.
This is the end of our news update. Please click the icon on the top right corner of your screen to watch my next video. You will enjoy it. I will see you again in my next update. Enjoy the rest of your day. Goodbye for now.